Second Lieutenant Robert Waugh was part of the 339th Infantry Regiment of the 85th Infantry Division, nicknamed the Polar Bears, for the regiment's service in North Russia during World War I. Perhaps appropriately given that name, they sailed from Norfolk, Virginia on Christmas Eve, 1943, bound for war. They spent the next few months training in mountain warfare, amphibious assault, and beach landings. Then, in March, the division was ordered to Italy. The 339th Regimental Combat Team was the first to see combat. On March 17th, they were placed along the Gustav Line. In April, they were joined by the rest of the 85th. The Allies had been fighting along this stubborn line of German fortifications for months, and were now building toward a major assault. Breaking through the Gustav Line would bring them close to the Italian capital of Rome. A booklet published by the 85th Division later in the war described the setting.
The 339th Infantry moved up first to hold a front extending 5,500 yards in from the sea, with 3 battalions abreast. Our troops were dispersed in foxholes, behind rocks, and in buildings. Outposts were established a few hundred yards ahead of our forward positions. Some of these were used as way stations for the patrols as they went out and came back. Some had names: Ferdinand's, Snuffy's, Mother's Place. On this sector of the Gustav Line, most of our enemy positions were on reverse slopes of the hills. On the forward slopes, there were minefields and wire barriers. From the higher hills, behind the first ridges, the artillery, mortars, and self-propelled guns were in position to blast at any of our troops coming down to attack the dug-in positions. Along the division front, the night of May 11th, 1944, there was no moon and enough layers of mist in the upper air to obscure the stars. In the dark, along the entire line from the Tyrrhenian Sea through Cassino to the Adriatic, men waited to attack. At 11 p.m., the great artillery barrage began. Long toms, the great 240mm guns, 75mm pack howitzers, cannon, British 6 and 25-pounders, 105s, 155s, everything let go at that moment. For a full half hour, shells were poured into the German positions, tens of thousands of them. Almost nothing could be heard but the thunder of guns, and the air was lit up by the flashes of the powder charges. As the guns ceased firing, companies, platoons, and squads advanced slowly into the fire that immediately met them.
Second Lieutenant Robert Waugh was part of that swarm of men charging into enemy fire. He led G Company's 1st Platoon as they fought their way to take Hill 79, a heavily fortified German stronghold. Artillery, mortar fire, and machine gun fire rained down on G Company from the start of their charge. Lieutenant Waugh halted his platoon at a position on the northeast side of the hill. The way ahead was heavily mined. Running pell-mell through a minefield while dodging machine gun and mortar fire was suicidal. But they had to take the hill. Lieutenant Waugh reconnoitered the area under fire and determined a path through the minefields. He then returned and led his platoon to the reverse slope of the hill, where the enemy was bunkered. Surprised, the Germans turned their machine gun fire onto the trail, killing many of Waugh's men. Waugh directed his men to fire on the 6 bunkers that guarded the hill, while he advanced upon them alone. When he reached the first bunker, he hurled phosphorus grenades inside. When the enemy rushed out, Lieutenant Waugh killed them with a burst from his Tommy gun. He repeated the action on a second bunker, then the third, Eventually, he individually cleared all 6 enemy bunkers, killing or capturing the enemy soldiers as they raced to escape his thrown grenades. Waugh's incredible actions broke the defense of Hill 79. His platoon, plus G Company's 2nd platoon, dug in to face the German counter-assaults. For 2 days, they held the majority of the hill while they battled the Germans that remained. Cut off from the rest of their regiment, by the morning of May 14th, after over 60 hours of constant fighting, G Company was low on supplies and ammunition. 2 enemy pillboxes controlled the only trail up the hill, and time was running out. Waugh ordered his men to lay a base of fire on the pillboxes, repeating his actions from the battle's beginning, but this time in daylight. He then ran to the first pillbox and hurled several grenades inside. When the defenders raced out into the open, he killed them. Then he moved to the second pillbox and did it again. The Gustav line was broken at that point on Hill 79. Lieutenant Waugh had personally neutralized 6 bunkers and 2 pillboxes, killing 30 enemy soldiers and capturing 25 more in the process. His gallantry and intrepid actions over those 3 long days earned Robert Waugh a promotion to First Lieutenant and the Medal of Honor. Sadly, he would not live to find this out. Less than a week later, on May 19, 1944, Lieutenant Robert Waugh was killed while leading his platoon in an attack at Ypres, Italy. But his courageous actions helped break the Gustav line, which made Allied victory possible. On June 4, 1944, the capital of Italy was captured by the Allies.